Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
Hello everybody, it's Nate with Felix Fingers Dueling Pianos. I'm here with the amazing Jennifer Mullis of Swanson Signature Events. We're going to be talking a little bit about, well, everything. Jennifer and I have become kind of close friends, so I'm really excited to be talking with her here today. Hello, Jennifer.
I'm excited to be here.
Oh, wonderful. So I wanted to dive right in and talk first kind of to see how your week, your season is shaping up and just learn a little bit about what the summer and fall of 2024 are shaping up to be for you.
Yes, so thankfully it is shaping up to be a beautiful season. We have some great weddings and events on the books. We have a few in Atlanta still. We've gone through a little bit of a transition and we had an Atlanta branch. So we still have some
Uh-huh.
there. Um, but we can go through the transition a little bit more in a little bit. We're kind of phasing out Atlanta and focusing more on the Low Country, Savannah, Golden Isle side of things. So thankfully we have some beautiful weddings though in Savannah as well. So
Absolutely. And as much as I love Atlanta, I got to admit the scenery in the Savannah area is prime. So
no, because we had the beautiful
uh, that's
ocean. Yeah.
that's right. Okay, so obviously, you all do a ton of weddings, and I rather than give you a million to choose from, I'd love to hear. Tell me about your most recent wedding. Was there anything especially noteworthy? Do you want to shout out the couple?
Yeah, my most recent one was in June, and it was at the Jekyll Island Club
Hmm.
Resort. And it was such a fun wedding. That was the one where we even got to work with you guys, Felix and Fingers. And what was so exciting is exactly. And what was so exciting is that she did have the dueling pianos at her reception. And I have not had a bride do that before. And I was so excited when she told me she wanted to do that. And that ended up being such a fun and unique detail for her wedding. And everybody loved it and was so surprised when they walked into the dance floor area and saw the two pianos. It was so fun for everyone.
Awesome. So when I asked that question, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that it might have been with us, but I'm so excited to hear that. It's always nice to get a little, extra pat on the back. But
Exactly.
that's so cool. Um, so, so, one of the things that we're known for is, our uniqueness and especially when it comes to weddings. But I'd love to hear a little bit about what makes Swanson Signature Events like sort of unique in the space.
So when you hire Swanson Signature Events, we really try to keep a certain level of excellence on every event that we do. We take every event personally, put our hearts and souls into it. And when you hire us, you get a team. It's not just one person. So on the day of your event, you will get at least a lead and an assistant, if not also a day of that comes and helps with setup. There is so much that goes into a wedding day that we really want our leads to be able to focus on the bride and groom for the day. And then the assistant focuses on the vendors and helps with setup. And then if we have our third person, that third person focuses on the personal decor inventory, which is the stuff that the bride brings, such as seating charts, place cards, guest books, you name it, all the things. And those all take time to put out, but a venue is not going to put those things out for you. So each of our three members has a certain focus so that we can make sure that day runs smoothly. And if there are any fires, because sometimes there are fires we can't plan for, the bride and groom will not know about it. We take care of it so that they can focus and enjoy their day.
That as somebody who is actually planning my wedding right now, I'm getting married in about a month,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
having that sort of, I don't want to say buffer, but having somebody that I know can handle all of those things is so helpful and has been a huge stress relief. So that's really amazing. So, you know, we've done weddings with you all. We've talked a little bit about the weddings that you've done, but I wanted to touch on something that a lot of folks might not know, and that is a little bit about, your background. It's not very often, and I'm going to kind of let the cat out of the bag here, but it's not very often we meet a planner who started on the other end of the spectrum in law. So tell me a little bit about that, kind of the history and that decision to make that transition from, working in law to working on weddings.
Yeah, so it, in college and all that, I was pre-law doing all the stuff to go to law school, and that was definitely my dad's dream for me, was for me to be a lawyer. And I even got into law school, had a seat, and a couple weeks before law school started, I told my dad that this was his dream and not mine. That was a tense moment for a while,
Oh
for sure.
boy.
And I told him that I really wanted to be an event planner. And of course, at that moment, he's like, but that's not a lawyer. But I'm so grateful to say that he has seen how much I love it. He has seen the events that I have produced. And now he is totally on board and very supportive. But it's interesting to say that my law background is actually very helpful in this business because, like, being on the planning side, if you hire me for full planning, for example, I have to read all the contracts that come in and make sure that they are what you're wanting. And if not, how can we possibly get some things changed? And I'm looking at pricing, and I have to do a lot of writing. And that all kind of came from that pre-law background. So I am glad to say it's been helpful. And but yeah, it's definitely a change from law to event planning.
I was going to say, I don't know if you picked the less or the more hectic side of, the job industry.
Good question.
But yeah, yeah, I would actually say that that's actually something I didn't even think of. Is like, yeah, somebody who understands the ins and outs of things like contracting and what it means to put together a good plan. I mean, if you're preparing something, I don't know if you were going into like trial law or anything like that, but I could actually see it being there would be a lot of parallels in preparation for working in law versus preparing a wedding. I always tell my couples it's like they say it takes a village to raise children. It takes two villages to plan a wedding. So, awesome. So, before we talk more about like weddings and events, and I want to hear some more stories. There was something else that you had mentioned to me before that I wanted to give you a chance to kind of dive in and share a little bit more about, and that is MOPS, or Mothers of Preschoolers. And
Yeah.
that project, I know it's really dear to your heart. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so when my son was born, we moved to Savannah 2 weeks after he was born. And we moved from Middle Georgia, and that was really hard leaving my family at that particular moment. So when I got here, I didn't know anybody. And it's really hard to get out and know people when you're stuck at home with a newborn. And we moved here for my husband's job at the time. And so he was, working long days. So I found out about mothers or preschoolers, and that was such a fun and helpful way to meet other moms who were going through the same things I was going through, and ended up being a huge support network for me. And over time, I ended up moving my way up in a volunteer position to the director role for several years and helped direct that group, which was just wonderful to see. I was able to help moms who were in similar situations that I was when I first started out. And so that was definitely it was very dear to my heart and taught me a lot, even for event planning, to direct that much. So it was great.
Well, I would say directing wedding guests after their third or fourth glass of wine and directing preschoolers is kind of the same thing.
That's true. That is true. It's a very good point. And moms were and exhausted and overwhelmed. Yeah, it's a lot of similarities.
Well, and I will say I've been working on my vow writing, and I fully intend to cry like a baby. So, that's going to be very similar as well.
That's
So,
right.
before we move on, uh, you know, we've talked a little bit about mothers preschoolers for you there in Savannah, but if I heard you right, is MOPS or Mothers of Preschoolers, is it an organization that folks could find elsewhere as well?
It is. It is actually a national organization. So there are chapters
Ooh.
of it all over the country. The main um, hub that kind of overlooks everything is in Colorado. So it's amazing that there are chapters for
Oh,
moms all over the
okay.
country. So it's really exciting.
That's so cool. Well, I know for a fact that folks that watch this, a lot of them are getting married, and if they're anything like me, it's part of the 5-year plan to, get married, have kids, and so, knowing about sort of support and options for the next steps is kind of cool. I know I will be definitely checking it out when the time comes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit and about like stories. I want to hear I, if you were to tell me about any wedding from your history with Swanson Signature, something that's like funny or especially touching. I know that I love hearing stories of great weddings. I'm the kind of guy that still gets misty at every ceremony I'm a part of. But I also know that that can really share a little bit about who you are, about who Swanson Signature Events is. It can be a disaster story, it can be a funny story, or it can be something especially touching. Just share with me some experience that you've had.
It's a great question. So I kind of think back to my wedding that I had in May. And the reason that one's on my
Mm-hmm.
mind is because that was a full planning as well. So I worked with that couple for a year or a little over a year and really got to know them and got to know kind of some things that were important to them. So when we came to the
Uh huh.
May, I was able to put a lot of sweet moments into their day that I knew would matter to them. So, like, we worked into the timeline, for example, where I knew the groom was really close to his mom. So, we made sure that his mom got to put the boutonniere on him and get a special sweet moment with him and get a photo. And we made sure we got to work it out during the dances, the first dances. He got to dance with his grandmother. And that was one of the
Mm-hmm.
sweetest first dances I've seen because I haven't had a groom want to dance with his grandmother before. And just getting to those personalizations, and I just loved seeing throughout that whole day, we got to personalize things to them. And at the end of the day, they were like, this was our day and what we wanted. And it wasn't just a, like thrown together general day. And that just made me so happy to hear that.
Right. Right. I've been in the wet. My gosh, like I said, I still get misty at every wedding I do. I am going to be a mess at my own wedding, but yeah, my favorite weddings are also when folks add those personal touches. It could be something specifically funny. In a moment, I'll share an anecdote about our own wedding. But like when you can tell that the moments and the things that they're doing are especially meaningful, it just yeah, it just makes my day. I'm trying not to get lost in memories of
Oh,
the weddings that I've had that that have had those elements.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, you touched on that this couple was a full planning client
Mhm.
of yours. Um, Tell me a little bit about like your full planning. Like what goes into it? How many hours do folks get with you? What's sort of entailed in your full planning packages?
Yeah, so our full cleaning packages, the lead alone will end up doing somewhere between 250 to 350 hours of work. And we are very involved. We have a five-stage process, and what the first phase, we work with the client and we pick out vendors with them. We make sure the whole vendor team is built. And what I do is I listen to them and what they want. So let's say it's photographer. I find out what type of feel do they want. Do they want the light and breezy photos? Do they want more moody? And then I'll present photographers to them and they get to choose who they want to meet with and I'll get meetings set up, and then they choose their photographer, for example. Once we get the whole vendor team built, then we move to design. And that's where I listen to what they want as far as design. I create a design board for them. Once it's approved, we use that design board to go to the rental companies, stationery, and the florist and get that design dream built. It's so fun. That's such a fun part of the phase. I feel like our planning. I feel like everybody, all the brides love that phase, and it's one of my favorites too. And then we move to
Right.
coordination where we start bringing together the timeline in their day. What do they want to incorporate into their day? And making sure I know what the vendors need. How long do vendors need for setup? What do they need power? Do they need vendor mills? All those things so that we can create a timeline that is hopefully helpful for vendors. Because like you said, it takes
Yeah.
two villages of people to bring together a team or a wedding day. So I want to make sure
Right.
everybody has what they need on the vendor side and everybody has what they need on the client side.
Yeah.
And then is execution. So that's we're there for the rehearsal and we lead that. We're usually on Friday also already working on personal decor items. We're going ahead and working with the clients to get them all set up and organized. So on Saturday, well, usually Saturday, the wedding day, when we show up, we're there to get everything going. We're not worried about anything missing or needing to organize things. And we're usually there on the wedding day anywhere from 10 to 12 to 14 hours so, between our team. So it's
Oh
long,
yeah.
long days. And then there's the
Yeah.
the toast part, but that's where we're just following up, making sure everything is was good and all of that. So it's quite a process, although it's a fun one.
Awesome. Awesome. So, I mentioned that I might have mentioned 5 or 6 times on this interview that I'm getting married myself, and we talked a little bit about like customization, and we talked a little bit about decor. Or actually, I wanted to ask you about decor, but I wanted to share a little bit about kind of our personalization and decor. So,
Yeah.
right down to the way our ceremonies run, we actually have an officiant that's my dear friend that's going to introduce us. But we also have, and I don't want to give too much away, but we have our first dance is actually going to start with a dance that's not just us dancing. We have a chair dancing routine for our guests to start us off, and it's going to be part of our introductions. And that's the kind of goofy personalization that
I love
I'm
that.
using. But I've seen, a lot of those sort of unique things. We're also so for us, we're actually using local wildflowers as all of our floral. We found a nursery that grows and helps populate and keep populated local wildflowers where I'm going to be getting married in Central Virginia, and they actually wind up growing more than they need to kind of help maintain the healthy population. And so we
Yeah.
were able to rent in some of those, and it's kind of special. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about like fun decor. We talked about execution. Tell me a little bit about the execution. What some really cool things you've seen as far as like decor and in those stages.
So some fun things I've seen in decor. I love right now that it's trending to use fruit in the florals, and so I was just at a styled shoot Wednesday, and they were the florist and the designer was really showing that off. So they had the florals, but then they had grapes and pears and. They even were using eggplant and stuff like that. So it's at a style shoot at Beulah House,
Oh,
which is near us. And it was so fantastic. Like I'm seeing more and more fruit and vegetable trends with the florals. And I think that is so
ah,
fun. I
who
know,
thought?
right? And I also love that floral installations are so huge right now. I just think it's so pretty when there's florals hanging over the dance floor or over the head tables. So I've really enjoyed that. And I also enjoy seeing, I know the non-floral side, but seeing like the ground umbrellas being used at ceremonies for extra shade. But I think they look so classy. So I've really been enjoying some of the new things trending in.
Okay. So yeah, so florals all over the dance floor. I always kind of think it's really cool when couples put like flowers like on our on sides or in front of our piano. It's kind of like getting to play my instrument in a garden. But yeah, it's really cool. And I never would have guessed fruit fruit of all things.
I know.
But now that you say it, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I myself am having a summer wedding. Why not have summer fruits?
Right,
So,
exactly.
um, okay, so you had mentioned earlier, you'd said that you had a really funny story, and I got distracted and sidetracked. Tell me that. Tell me the story.
So I remember I was working at one wedding and I had sent everybody down the aisle. And usually, after I send people, the bride down the aisle, I walk away because I'm going to work on some other things for a few minutes to make sure cocktail hour's ready. And I started hearing everyone laughing, and I was like, I wonder what that was about. But then I listened and I could tell the officiant, everything picked back up and was going. I found out later there was a moment in the ceremony where the grandfather was supposed to stand up. It was a special moment. Well, when he stood up, his pants fell down. His boxer stayed
Oh
on,
no! Oh
but his
no!
pants fell down. But thankfully, he was very witty and said something very funny to the audience, so everybody knew it was okay to laugh, and they all just laughed it off. And it ended up being a really sweet but funny moment. So you just never know what's going to happen in weddings, in
You
events.
never ever know. That actually reminds me of a lakeside wedding I did years and years ago. It was at a private residence. They had a beautiful lakeside home, and we were doing the ceremony down next to the lake. Well, because of the layout, where everyone had to park at this private residence was about 30 yards off camera, off to the side. Um, Ceremony's going beautifully. They get to their vows. Suddenly, a car alarm starts going off.
Oh no.
But the thing that made it brilliant was the groom, without missing a beat in the middle of his vows, just ducks his head and puts his, and he just goes, Mark, and it's his brother who's in the front row has sat on his keys, and he knew this because his brother, it happens to his brother all the time because he always keeps his keys in his back pocket. And so
Oh
he's always
no.
sitting on his car keys and setting off his car alarm. And so it just turned into this moment. And then, so, Mark stands up, turns off the car alarm, and just kind of does one of these, and everybody starts laughing. And then we go right back into, but the pacing of it was like watching a comedy movie. It was just brilliant. And I mean, this wedding was 6 or 7 years ago, and I can still see it in my head vividly. Sometimes those unexpected moments are the things that make the memories that last literally a lifetime.
That
Now,
is so
Grandpa may
true.
never live it down, but
Good
everyone's
point.
gonna remember Grandpa's speech now. So,
That's
um, okay. So before we wrap up, and I want to ask you a little bit more about what it means to actually, get involved with Swanson Signature Events for your wedding. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the other side of the coin. You and I are professionals. We see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of weddings, and we always love talking about the things that go really, really well or the things that are just spectacular. But I always like to take a moment in our show to talk a little bit about the challenges, words of advice, words of caution for our couples. Can you tell me I'm going to ask two questions. The first question is, can you tell me a story where something went wrong, and it got resolved, or how it got resolved, or can you tell me give advice of like, hey, this is a challenge or a mistake that I see a lot of couples make, and here's how to fix it. Either one of those would be.
Yeah, so I feel like a mistake I see a lot of couples make is they think that the venue coordinator is going to be their own personal coordinator or planner, and that's not the case. So I have a
It's not.
lot of them talk to me, and they'll go, "Well, I don't necessarily know if I need to hire you, but I wanted to just go ahead and reach out. But we have a venue coordinator, so don't really feel like y'all are necessary." But venue coordinators work for the venue. Of course, they're going to serve the client in the light of the venue, but we serve the clients. So if anything goes wrong on the day of, unless it involves the venue's not going to help with that. And I know I mentioned earlier, they're not going to put out your personal decor. They're not going to help you in the planning process with coming up with your timeline, your design, or any of that. So I that is something that I really want to caution people about is like, please understand we're here to work for you guys and to make your day easier, show you how to save money if possible. Like we are focusing on you and go ahead and hire
Right.
us from the beginning, whether that's full planning or whether that's event management. But that way, you know, you have someone on your side from the beginning.
Right. Right. And oh my gosh, I could hug you because that is we talked about it taking two villages, and everybody has a role and a position, and it's really easy for couples to get my own fiance, who hears me talk about weddings probably too much. Um, even she kind of didn't understand the difference between a venue coordinator and a wedding coordinator. And this is not to say that venue coordinators are in any way horrible or bad.
No,
It's
they're
just
great. They're great.
their role is very, very different. Their role is to make sure the space is beautiful and everyone with the venues where they should be, and if they have a kitchen, to make sure the catering is on time.
Hmm.
There's a lot more details than that. So
Oh,
um, I can I'm going to second, third, fourth, and fifth that statement. That is absolutely an amazing piece of advice. Okay, so we've talked about the do's, we talked about the don'ts, we've shared stories. I know I am excited to hear what you have to say about what does it mean? What is the process getting started with Swanson Signature Events? What do you look for in a couple? What should they be looking for from you? Tell me about, if any of our couples out there want to get to bring Swanson Signature Events into their wedding planning.
yes. So, one of the first ways to reach out to us is to go to our website. I believe it's
Hmm.
just swansonsignatureevents.com and fill out one of our lead forms, and that'll come
Okay.
into us. And if we have that date available, we'll be on top of getting out and reaching out. And
Uh huh.
we, I try to reach out within a few hours. If not, if it's a weekend or something, it might be like 24 hours, but I try to reach out as quickly as I can and go ahead and let them know about our different offerings because we do
Hmm.
have the event management, which is for people who want to do most of the planning but want more of a day of. But our version of day of is we come in 60 days out because we can't uh,
Yeah.
do an excellent job of day of if we haven't been part of some of the planning process. We need to know what's going on
Yeah.
and help with the timeline. And or do they want full planning? And do they want to add on some other services that we offer? I kind of let them know all those things so that we can build the package around them. And as far as our ideal clients, a lot of it is the ones who are willing to trust us and trust our professionalism. Because sometimes I think it's hard if they don't trust us. And I feel like we almost are trying to push a rock up a hill. But it's like,
Right.
please trust us and know that we have your best interest at heart and we really are working for you.
Absolutely. I ask folks that question, and probably the number one answer. I ask questions like, "What is the one piece of advice? What is the one mistake?" And resoundingly, folks say, trust the professionals. I've been very blessed to be in the wedding industry for a number of years, and every single person I've encountered, like, it's their life, it's their mission to make every wedding just absolutely spectacular. And so we don't get married once. Well, I'm going to get married once, but we don't just get to see a handful of weddings over the course of our life. We see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We know what works, what doesn't, and we know how to make the things you want work because we have a slightly different perspective, a different scope, and so that is amazing. And you might have seen me chuckle when you mentioned day of coordination. Yes, there's day of is a bit of a misnomer. It's 60 days of. So okay, so I wanted to share one last little detail before we hop off, and I'm really excited to announce it. So, Jennifer, you are offering something really incredible that if folks, see our podcast and, see our interview and want to get started with you, as long as they mention that they saw you and me here, they get $250 off the event management package, which is that sort of like partial planning that we talked about, or day of coordination, and $500 off the full event production package, their full planning package. That is absolutely incredible. I also get to say that we are going to essentially match that. So couples that book with us, if they're booking our most basic package, they will get at minimum $250 off and up to $500 off. We have many packages, so. But as long as they're working with Swanson, they're going to get a little something special from us. And as long as they mention this podcast, they're going to get something special from you. I have just had an absolute blast talking with you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences and your story with me. And hopefully we'll see you at a wedding real soon.
Thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.